The National Desk, America's News, now.
We can't walk away now. And that's what Putin is betting on. He's betting on we're going to walk away.
2 years of war in Ukraine, and the United States hits Russia with new sanctions. But will it end the war? On the hot seat, new evidence suggesting Fani Willis lied on the stand, what the documents allege against the defiant district attorney. As South Carolina takes the primary stage, why an expected win by Donald Trump is not the end of the race. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. We are tracking a high-altitude balloon right now, making its way across the western part of the United States. Officials saying the military has determined it is not a threat, but they still don't know where it's from or what it's doing. It comes a year after a Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the coast off of South Carolina's coast after traversing across the country. We'll be following the developments on this story throughout the night, and you can stay up to date with all the latest on thenationaldesk.com. And tonight, a somber anniversary. It has been 2 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Biden administration unveiling more sanctions just today against Russian military firms and financial institutions that contribute to the war efforts. The administration said this new round of sanctions will have a crushing impact on that regime. Still, the White House has said this will not be the last time they punish Putin and his allies.
You can expect more from the administration with respect to holding the Kremlin accountable for Mr. Navalny's death. Today was just the start.
But some are questioning the effectiveness of these sanctions and the war's endgame as Congress debates whether to send more aid to Ukraine. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a closer look at the war strategy.
It's been 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. President Joe Biden now responding with more than 500 new sanctions against Russia.
We in the United States are going to continue to ensure that Putin pays the price for his aggression abroad and repression at home.
Biden is also forcing these penalties for the death of Putin critic Alexei Navalny. But after 2 years of sanctions by the U.S. and dozens of other countries, Russia is not deterred.
Their economy is doing all too well, which unfortunately allows them to sustain the conflict in Ukraine and rebuild the losses that they've incurred.
Meanwhile, Biden is again pushing for Congress to pass a bill that would give Ukraine over $60 billion.
Russia is taking Ukraine territory for the first time in many months. But here in America, the Speaker gave the House a 2-week vacation.
Senator Rand Paul is calling out Democrats and Republicans for wanting to send more aid in light of America's border crisis and $34 trillion of debt.
They're prioritizing the border of Ukraine over the border of the United States. Our money's all gone.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says right now the number one task is to defend, and if they move too quickly, more lives will be lost.
Will Ukrainians survive without Congress support? Of course, but not all of us.
Yet 2 years in, there are growing concerns about not only how Ukraine is spending the money, but what the ultimate endgame is.
I think everyone is interested in conflict termination. But as I said, without a strategy, it's unclear how we get there. It'd be important to make that clear to the American people.
Amira, former President Trump says he can end the war in 1 day, but he hasn't given any specifics. And meanwhile, the Biden administration's strategy on how to end the conflict is unclear, causing more frustration for critics who want to focus more on issues here at home.
And Janae, a large package of sanctions. What exactly do these sanctions include?
Yeah, so the sanctions will be imposed by the Treasury, State, and Commerce departments, and targets include firms in China and Serbia. Now, the thought is this will restrict Russia's finances and hurt its ability to acquire materials for its war. But as experts told me, Russia's economy is currently in good shape, so we'll have to wait and see how these penalties will impact them. Amira.
All right, Janae Bowens, as always, thank you for keeping us informed live in D.C. And new tonight, a first look at Israel's long-awaited post-war Gaza plan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has revealed his first official plan that includes open-ended control over Gaza. Looking at the key takeaways of that plan, there are really three main points. It's calling for the freedom of activity by the IDF within the Gaza Strip, in addition to the West Bank, without a time limit, the sealing off of Gaza's border with Egypt, the territory's only crossing not controlled at this point by Israel, and the establishment of a security buffer zone, rendering parts of northern Gaza inaccessible for the return of Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority has sharply criticized the plan, as you can imagine. The Palestinians have long sought the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza as their future independent state. While there has been no immediate official U.S. reaction to the proposal, Secretary Blinken did respond to a separate announcement by Israel today that it planned to build 3,000 new settlement homes on Palestinian land.
New settlements are counterproductive to reaching an enduring peace. They're also inconsistent with international law. Our administration maintains a firm opposition to settlement expansion.
Meantime, in Paris, CIA Director Bill Burns, along with Egyptian, Qatari, and Israeli officials right now meeting to discuss ceasefire and hostage release efforts. AP reporting there is a deal inching forward that would put in place a 6-week temporary ceasefire and see the release of elderly and sick hostages in an initial phase of a deal. Tonight, police have arrested an unnamed suspect in the death of a University of Georgia student who disappeared yesterday after going for a run. It comes just hours after police identified the slain woman as 22-year-old Laken Hope Riley, a junior in the nursing school there. Authorities say she left for a jog and a friend phoned 911 when she didn't return. Her body was later found in a nearby wooded area. All classes on UGA's campus were canceled today and will resume on Monday. We are learning more about a Colorado college student charged with killing 2 people last Friday. The bodies of Samuel Knopp and Celie Rain Montgomery were found in a UCCS dorm. A new court document writes the suspect, Nicholas Jordan, had threatened to kill Knopp, who was his roommate, if he asked him to take out the trash again. Officials also discovered Jordan had a loaded AK-47. 3-year-old Elijah View still missing after 4 days, and his mother, along with another man, are in jail right now for being party to child neglect. Both Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang appeared in court today. Bauer's cash bond is $15,000. Vang's is $20,000. Prosecutors say Bauer left Elijah with Vang for, quote, disciplinary reasons on Tuesday, and then provided false information to police when asked about his whereabouts. They are both due in court on Monday. The medical examiner reports say 11-year-old Audrey Cunningham died from, quote, blunt head trauma. Case investigators say that family friend Don McDougal, who has been charged with murder, had agreed to take Audrey to her school bus stop last Thursday. She never made it. And tonight, the former president, Donald Trump, weighing in on IVF access in the wake of that bombshell ruling that decided embryos were children. Trump calling on Alabama lawmakers to rewrite the law. Alabama House Democrats already introduced a bill that would clarify that fertilized human eggs or embryos are not considered human beings. Since the court ruling, at least 3 medical centers have paused all IVF procedures for fear of criminal prosecution. The Alabama decision came from wrongful death cases brought by 3 couples who had frozen embryos destroyed in an accident at a fertility clinic. Now the destruction or even throwing away of unused embryos could be considered murder, creating a host of civil and criminal implications, of course, for families.
Many of the embryos that we make don't survive to being able to make a child. That's just normal human development. That's where the confusion of what do you do with these embryos.
And the latest statistics show roughly 1 in 6 people globally are affected by infertility in their lifetime. 6 cases of measles have been reported at an elementary school near Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The CDC advises parents with unvaccinated children to keep them home for up to 3 weeks during an outbreak. But Florida is leaving that up to the parents. The Surgeon General saying the community has a high immunity rate. But state data shows only about a quarter of Florida's counties have reached the 95% threshold at which they're considered well protected. And former President Donald Trump's legal team filed a series of motions in his classified documents case in Florida. They're asking Judge Cannon to dismiss the case because Donald Trump was president when the classified documents were packed, and under the Presidential Records Act allows him unreviewable discretion over the documents. The court's response is expected by March 7th. Lawyers representing Trump are continuing to say prosecutors in the Georgia election interference case are lying about when their relationship began in a new court filing. Trump's legal team now presenting cell phone tracking data they say proves District Attorney Fani Willis and Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade began a relationship long before 2022, which would refute their testimony that a relationship didn't begin until after 2022. A clearly established romantic relationship could result in their disqualification from this pivotal case. The next hearing in the case scheduled for March 1st. Coming up, the next Republican presidential primary is tomorrow, but many already see the race as a done deal. What people at the Conservative Political Action Conference are saying. Then drugs are getting more expensive. How much more new medications cost last year than the year before? Plus, the dramatic change in the government that could be behind a deadly bacterial outbreak linked to eye drops. We're back in just 90 seconds. South Carolina will hold its Republican primary tomorrow. Former President Trump is widely expected to beat Nikki Haley, the state's former governor. But even if she loses in her home state, Haley says she's staying in the race until at least Super Tuesday, which is on March 5th. To win the Republican nomination, a candidate needs 1,215 delegates. Trump currently has 63 to Haley's 17. South Carolina is a winner-take-all state with 50 delegates at stake. Even with a win, Trump has a long way to go to officially wrap up the nomination. And prominent Republicans are gathering outside Washington, D.C. for the 2024 Conservative Political Action Conference, known as CPAC. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us from National Harbor, Maryland, where organizers appear to be setting up this conference as a coronation of Trump as the nominee.
CPAC, the annual gathering of prominent conservatives, confirming this is still very much Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Where are my MAGA, ultra MAGA patriots at today?
The speakers list full of Trump loyalists like Congressman Byron Donalds, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, and former Trump cabinet member Ben Carson.
Our justice system has been weaponized.
Virtually no signs of the never-Trump wing of the GOP.
Trump is it, beginning and end.
Many attendees see the primary race as a done deal.
He won right from the get-go. He won before it began.
Even though Nikki Haley hasn't dropped out, despite having a near impossible path to victory.
I think everybody understands that Trump is the front runner. I mean, obviously, right? Anybody that thinks differently is not paying attention.
That confidence, though, has some attendees worried.
I worry about it because of complacency. We have a tendency as a society to pump our fist before it's over.
Regardless, many here are looking ahead.
Who do you think would be an ideal running mate for Donald Trump?
Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott, but equally Ron DeSantis.
I like Kristi Noem.
Believe it or not, I think Ben Carson would be a very, very smart pick.
I like Byron Donalds. Tulsi Gabbard.
Our democracy is under attack.
The organizers even calling this year's conference their version of The Apprentice, a reference to Trump's former reality TV show. Despite being on Trump's shortlist, Ron DeSantis appeared to remove himself from the running, according to sources who were on a private phone call DeSantis held with his supporters. On that call, DeSantis reportedly speculating identity politics will play a role in the decision.
CPAC even conducting their own straw poll, asking attendees who they see as Trump's ideal VP. The list even includes some unconventional candidates like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running as an independent for president. Trump himself will be speaking here on Saturday. At CPAC, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Kayla, thank you. Newly launched medications in the U.S. have been getting a little more expensive. Reuters found that the prices of new drugs last year were on average 35% higher than they were the year before in 2022. The median price was $300,000 in 2023, up from $222,000 the year before. It's partly because of an increase in costly treatments for rare diseases. The IRS is expanding its new free tax filing site called Direct File. It'll become available to qualifying residents of 12 states during unannounced windows of time in the coming days. That's according to the agency. Its status will be posted at the top of the Direct File website. Then in mid-March, the program will become more widely available. The Dow Jones Industrial Average briefly set a new all-time record high as trading today hit 39,282. Although at closing it finished 128 points below the record set yesterday at 39,259, still well up for the week. The S&P also is setting records, crossing 5,100 for the first time ever today, closing at an all-time high of 5,088. Although the NASDAQ market, that fell 44 points today, one day after setting its all-time high. Last year's Hollywood strikes are still impacting the industry in big ways. Today, Warner Brothers Discovery said its studio business revenue dropped 17% in the fourth quarter, more than expected. A weak ad market also contributed to the decline. The company is hoping for a rebound with its Dune sequel that's coming out in March after it was delayed because of those strikes. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Meyer Daya is the manager of the heliophysics section at Southwest Research Institute. He notes that the sun had 3 large solar flares Wednesday night and early Thursday morning. This was from an active region in the sun.
There's lots of activity happening on there. We already saw two X-class flares and 1 M-class flares, and this is something really big.
Big, but not uncommon. He notes that these flares have always happened, but we notice them more as we become so reliant on technology. However, the particular outages happening Thursday are unlikely to be related to the solar flare activity.
They are unlikely to be the causes of the outages, just simply because of the timing. It would have been nighttime, so we were pointing in the wrong direction. We were pointing away from the sun.
These pictures show the terrifying extent of this plain pen attack. Como News is not naming or showing you the victim, but as you see here, he suffered major injury around one of his eyes after being stabbed repeatedly with this makeshift shank. According to court papers, Lopez was convinced that the victim was a cartel member who was following him. As a result, he allegedly told FBI agents, "I planned on attacking him." and killing him.
I'm just trying to make ends meet at this point in time.
Letitia Bishop in a financial hole she never expected, strapped for cash, all thanks to an expensive order.
Stressed, overwhelmed. I couldn't get groceries at one point because my account was negative.
Back in January, Bishop says she stopped by this gas station on Winchester Pike to grab a few sandwiches from Subway. The receipt she showed us points out to 3 subs that were ordered. The total, more than $1,000 charged to her debit card.
I talked to the Subway in person and just tried to see what was going on and see if they could instantly credit me back the money that they had actually charged me. But they told me I had to get a hold of Subway. There's no phone number that actually leads to a live person.
She could file a complaint with the Cromwell, Connecticut Better Business Bureau, where Subway is an accredited business, which means they've pledged to respond to any complaints brought to their attention.
Coming up, new information about the failures leading up to a deadly outbreak that's connected to eye drops. We'll tell you about it on the other side. We are learning more about a deadly outbreak of a rare bacteria tied to eye drops. 7 people have died. 4 others had their eyes surgically removed because of contamination traced to a factory in India. The failures that led us here are coming into focus. As national investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher reports, there's been a dramatic drop in the FDA's inspection of foreign factories that supply the drugs we use every day.
I really don't know what happened, but I just know I can't believe it happened to me.
Renee Martre's eyes were dry, so she picked up some drops on a family road trip in the summer of 2022. Not long after, pain, swelling, and distorted vision. And in a matter of months, an infection so severe, doctors told her she could go blind.
She said, "You're going straight to the cornea specialist right now. That if we don't get this under control, you will lose all your vision."
Medical tests showed a rare strain of bacteria that had never been reported in the United States, later tied to EzraCare, the eye drops Renee was using. Doctors placed her on an intense regimen of powerful antibiotics, drops every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day, and doctor appointments every day.
That was just to keep you from losing your eye? Yeah, just to try to, we threw everything we could at it, seeing what would stick.
Even after more than a year of consistent pain and vision loss, Renee considers herself among the lucky. According to the CDC, at least 114 people were infected by the bacteria. 14 patients lost their vision. 4 had to have their eyes surgically removed, and 7 people died. EzraCare drops are made in India by Global Pharma Healthcare, and unbeknownst to many Americans, the products are not inspected by the FDA before landing on U.S. shelves.
I would think I could trust them to make sure I'm not going to be hurt by something they bring in from overseas.
We examined the FDA's history of inspections at that facility and found it had never been inspected until March of 2023. nearly a year after the CDC launched its investigation.
If FDA inspectors would have been in place, could these problems have been revealed earlier and avoided the terrible consequences we're seeing now from these eye drops?
I believe so.
Health economist and Duke University professor David Ridley tracks the FDA's inspections of foreign manufacturers, which produce more than 50% of the drugs in America. Between 2019 and 2022, inspections were down by nearly 80%.
Did you feel like you needed to do a double take the first time you saw the number?
Absolutely. We had to recheck those numbers. When they're so shocking, they need to be rechecked.
We asked the FDA why it is failing to inspect the facilities and who's keeping track of where the ingredients are coming from. They didn't answer our questions, but told us the public should rest assured that drugs are safe wherever they are made.
We don't know where the ingredients are coming from. We're not inspecting the establishments, and we're not testing the drugs themselves.
Renee Martre now stands as a warning about a factory 8,900 miles away being allowed to operate in the shadows.
I'm very disappointed, upset. You know, you think FDA, they got your back. They're gonna protect Americans, and they didn't.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
All right, thank you, Lisa. And coming up, scientists have just discovered a new Chinese dragon fossil what we now know about this creature. We'll tell you about it. A look at this. Scientists in Scotland have discovered a 240 million-year-old fossil reminiscent of the mythical Chinese dragon. The team from the National Museum of Scotland said the Dinocephalosaurus orientalis was a 5-meter-long aquatic reptile from the Triassic period. It was first identified in 2003, but the scientists now have a complete depiction of the creature. What a remarkable find. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Just check your local listings. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great weekend.